Hello, and welcome to our presentation of the Virginia Satir Family Therapy Model, presented by Danielle Dunster, Faiza Omen Sickley, Holly Wilson, and Carlina Wright. Virginia Satir, born in 1916 and passed in 1988, was a social worker and family therapist who helped shape the field of family therapy. She's often referred to as the mother of family therapy because her pioneering work in conjoint family therapy and her focus on helping families improve communication, strengthen their relationships, and build self-worth. Her work continues to influence family therapists today. Some of the key terms and definitions include self-esteem. Satir believed that healthy self-esteem is the foundation for healthy relationships. When people feel good about themselves, they are more likely to communicate honestly and cope effectively with challenges. Next is congruent communication. This is open, honest, and genuine communication. A person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are consistent with one another, which helps build trust and connection. Incongruent communication. When people hide their true feelings or needs, communication becomes unclear and often leads to misunderstandings or conflict. Family rules. Families develop spoken and unspoken rules that influence how members interact, and some promote healthy relationships while others can create barriers. And lastly, family roles. Family members often take on certain roles when dealing with stress or conflict. These roles can become automatic patterns that affect family relationships. The 5 communication stances. First, we have the placator. The placator tries to keep peace by pleasing others, apologizing, or avoiding the disagreement. This stance often comes from fear or rejection or conflict, so that person may ignore their own needs to keep others calm. The blamer. The blamer responds to stress by criticizing, accusing, or controlling others. This stance can protect the person from feeling vulnerable, but it often creates defensiveness and distance within the family. Next, we have the computer. The computer stance relies heavily on logic, facts, and emotional detachment. This person may appear calm or intellectual, but they often avoid showing feelings or having emotional needs. The distractor. The distractor avoids discomfort by changing the subject, joking around, acting scattered, or even pulling attention away from the real issue. This stance can reduce tension temporarily, but it prevents the family from addressing what is actually happening. The congruent communicator. The congruent communicator is able to express thoughts, feelings, and needs honestly while still respecting others. This is the healthiest stance because the person's words, emotions, body language, and behavior match more clearly. These stances represent coping patterns that therapy works to transform into more congruent communication. The core tenets of Virginia Satir's theory. At the heart of the Satir model is the belief that people have the ability to grow and change. Rather than focusing on what is wrong with individuals, Satir focused on helping people recognize their strengths and develop healthier ways of relating to themselves and others. Another key principle is the importance of self-esteem. Satir believed that low self-esteem and self-worth often contribute to unhealthy communication patterns and relationship difficulties. By improving self-esteem, individuals are better able to communicate openly and build stronger connections within their family. Satir also believed that family problems are often maintained through unhealthy patterns of interaction, rather than being caused by one person only. Therapy focuses on helping family members become more aware of their feelings and behaviors so they can communicate more authentically. Through experiential techniques such as family sculpting, role-playing, and guided activities, family members can gain insight into their relationships and create positive change. The goals of treatment. First is increase self-esteem and self-worth, helping individuals recognize their own value and build a stronger sense of self. Satir's change process helps people make choices that raise their self-esteem, increase their accountability, and move towards a more congruent sense of self. Promote congruent communication. Satir focused on helping family members communicate in ways that are honest, clear, and connected to what they truly think and feel, instead of defensing coping patterns. This goal is for each person to express their feelings and needs in a cleaner, healthier way. Transform unhealthy coping patterns. Treatment aims to help family members move away from survival-based patterns, such as blaming, placating, distracting, or avoiding emotion. The goal is to move into healthier ways of expressing needs and emotions. And then create healthier family connection and promote lasting change. Satir's goal is really to help family members feel heard and valued, as well as to communicate more openly and move away from their stuck interaction patterns. The role of the therapist uses self actively in the therapeutic process. In her theory, Satir believed the therapist is not passive or distant. The therapist uses their own presence, warmth, awareness, and communication style as part of the helping process. This means the therapist models authenticity and helps create a relationship where clients feel safe enough to explore themselves and their family patterns. Creates a safe, humanistic, growth-focused space. That's a mouthful. Satir's approach is grounded in a humanistic perspective, which means that the therapist views people as having worth and dignity, and of course, the ability to grow. The therapist's role is to create a safe environment where family members feel respected rather than blamed. This allows clients to become more open to self-awareness, change, and healthier ways of relating. Emphasizes worth, choice, and potential for change. A major role of the therapist is helping clients recognize that they are not stuck in old patterns forever. Satir believed people have the ability to make choices, learn new responses, and move forward towards growth. The therapist helps clients reconnect with their strengths and understand that change is possible. Help clients build self-esteem and congruent communication. In conjunction, the therapist helps clients explore how self-esteem affects the way they communicate. When people have lower self-worth, they may use unhealthy communication patterns such as blaming or withdrawing. The goal is to help clients communicate more congruently, meaning that they can express themselves honestly while still respecting others and the situation. Supports internal change that improves relationships. Satir therapy focuses on change that begins inside the person. The therapist helps clients become more aware of their feelings, their perceptions, expectations, and their longings. As clients better understand their internal experience, they can begin to respond differently in their relationships. And lastly, uses experiential techniques such as sculpting and family reconstruction. The therapist may use experiential techniques to help clients see and feel family patterns in a different way. Techniques such as family sculpting, role-playing, and even family reconstruction allow clients to explore relationships beyond just talking about them. These activities can help family members to gain insight, express their emotions, and practice healthier interactions. Family sculpting. It is a technique in which family members physically position themselves and others to represent their family relationships, also their roles and their emotional connections. This intervention helps reveal hidden family dynamics and patterns of interaction. Communication stances. Satir identified 4 communication styles: the placator, the blamer, the computer, the distractor, the congruent communicator. Therapists help clients recognize these patterns and develop more authentic and effective communication skills. Transactional integrations. Satir used transactional interventions to help family members become aware of their verbal and also their nonverbal communication patterns. so that they could change dysfunctional interactions. These interventions focused on improving communication, increasing self-esteem, and promoting more open and congruent relationships within the family. Family reconstruction involves examining multiple generations of the family history to identify these patterns, beliefs, and even unresolved issues that influence current relationships. This intervention helps gain insight and create healthier ways of relating to one another. Satir used role-playing as part of her family reconstruction intervention. Participants reenact significant family experiences and relationships from the client's past. And through this process, they gain greater insight into the family dynamics. They discuss and see unresolved emotions and patterns of communication that continue to affect their lives. Self-esteem enhancement believes that low self-esteem contributed to many family and personal problems. Therapists use affirmations, validation, and experiential exercises to help the client or clients develop stronger sense of self-worth. And lastly, the iceberg metaphor. Satir used this metaphor to help clients explore deeper emotions, their perceptions, expectations, and yearnings that lie beneath the observable behaviors. This intervention encourages a greater emotional awareness and understanding. Cultural considerations. Satir's model does include the idea of context, but Ines critiques the model for not fully developing in this area. He explains that context can include factors such as ethnicity, gender, class, religion, political economic conditions, and minority status. This matters because families do not experience problems or change in isolation. Their culture, environment, and access to support can shape how they communicate, how they cope, and how they respond to therapy. From a social work perspective, I think this is an important limitation to recognize. While Satir's focus on self-esteem, growth, and congruent communication is helpful, therapists also need to consider the external barriers that may affect the family. For example, things like poverty, discrimination, immigration experiences, gender roles, religious beliefs, or stigma may greatly influence how safe a family feels expressing themselves, their emotions, or even making changes. A culturally responsive therapist would avoid assuming that all families define communication, closeness, independence, or healing in the same way. So when using Satir's model, the therapist should balance the focus on internal change with a sense of curiosity about the family's cultural background and the larger environment they are with. This helps prevent the therapist from placing all responsibility for change on the individual or the family, while overlooking outside factors that may be impacting them. And here's a list of our references from today's Part 1 presentation. Part 2, our case analysis of the movie, What's Eating Gilbert Grape? The family members and close relationships from the Grape case include Gilbert, who is 24 and acts as the primary caretaker, though Amy is really the emotional glue of the family. Gilbert loves them, but feels trapped by his obligations and the small town he can't seem to leave. Bonnie became severely depressed and turned to overeating after her husband's suicide, and her weight is now a serious health concern. Arnie is approaching 18, and his disability means the family is constantly worried about his safety. Amy is the peacemaker, but she's also lonely and just wants the family to feel normal again. Ellen is the younger and has a sharp, cynical edge from growing up without her father and a mother who couldn't show up for her. And then there's Becky, who isn't part of the household, but whose presence ripples beyond Gilbert, including Arnie, who connects with her in his own way. The extended family and the father's influence on this case. Janice and Larry both left home. Janice travels the world, which Gilbert resents since he stayed behind. Larry stays away for a heavier reason. He found their father's body, and that trauma keeps him from coming home. The father isn't a character in the traditional sense, but he's arguably the most influential person in this entire story. His suicide is the event the whole family organized around. And from a Satir lens, his death set the original family rules in motion. Like, don't talk about the painful things and protect each other from more loss. Everyone is still operating under those rules today. One of the most noticeable concerns in this case is how much weight Gilbert is carrying. He's essentially acting as a parent for Arnie and a stabilizing force for the whole family, which causes him a lot of stress and resentment, and he doesn't really get to express himself. But this just isn't an individual problem. The whole family system has reorganized around Gilbert's willingness to assume this role. Bonnie's withdrawal, Amy's overfunctioning, and Ellen's frustration are all connected to that same unspoken arrangement. Underneath it all is grief that's never been processed and a family that's quietly agreed not to talk about it. A few Satir concepts that really stand out here. Self-esteem is a big one. Bonnie's shame and sense of worthlessness, and Gilbert's worth being tied entirely to taking care of others rather than themselves. We also see family homeostasis at play. This family has adapted to its dysfunction in ways that keep things stable but prevent any real growth. Satir's idea of the iceberg fits well too. What we see on the surface, like Gilbert's irritability or Bonnie's isolation, is just the tip of much deeper feelings nobody is naming. Something like family sculpting could be very powerful here. It would help make these invisible patterns visible so the family can see how disconnected things have become. And then there's Becky, who fits Satir's concept of a foreign element, someone from outside the system who disrupts its homeostasis. What's most interesting is that her impact isn't limited to just Gilbert. It ripples through the system and affects other members too, including Arnie, all of them in different ways. That's actually the core of what makes something a foreign element. It's not about one relationship, it's about introducing something that the whole rigid system is not built to accommodate. Communication stances. So each family member maps onto one of Satir's 5 communication stances. Gilbert is the placater, consistently, constantly managing everyone else's emotions while burying his own. Bonnie leans towards distractor, withdrawing rather than engaging with the pain she has directly. Amy operates as the computer. She stays logical and task-focused to keep emotion at an arm's length. Ellen tends towards the blamer, directing her frustration outward at the family and their entire situation. And then there's Arnie, who despite his disability is actually the most leveling person in the family. He says what he feels without filtering. There's something almost ironic here. The person with the most limitations is the most emotionally honest, while everyone else who is quote unquote functioning is communicating in ways that really keep them disconnected from one another. This family really operates under many unspoken rules. The family comes before yourself. Don't talk about painful feelings. Protect mom. Take care of Arnie no matter what. And don't burden anyone else with our problems. These rules aren't just restrictive, they were probably protective at some point too. The rule about not talking about painful feelings likely started as a way to survive right after their father's suicide. When talking about it, it probably felt unbearable, but the rule never got revisited once it stopped being necessary. Part of Satir's approach is helping families recognize which rules were once helpful but no longer serve them, and giving them the permission to update those rules rather than treating them as permanent ones. So the treatment goals. Communication and emotional expression are really the starting points here, since so much of what's going on flows from things staying unspoken. But before this family can communicate more openly, there may need to be some individual work, especially with Gilbert and Bonnie, to build enough self-esteem and safety so that they're actually capable of being vulnerable in front of each other. Satir's approach isn't just about teaching communication skills. It's about helping people feel worthy enough to use them. So the ideal sequence would be to start with individual self-worth work, move into family sculpting, to make the system's patterns visible, and then work towards renegotiating their roles and their rules all together as a family. Here are the references we used in part 2, and I just want to thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed our presentation.